So I had come from zero. Like I literally couldn't run to the end of the block. It's crazy to think about that, but I could maybe run 30 seconds. And so I feel like it was very like helpful in me being a coach to understand what zero feels like.
Welcome back to the Missoula podcast. In studio, Stephen Ressett, Courtney Babcock. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
2025. I remember like 20 years ago thinking we were going to have flying cars and like growing up watching the Jetsons, that life would be very different than it is here in 2025, but it's great. So happy to be here with you guys. Excited for this conversation.
Good to be here.
Yes, me too. Thanks for having me.
Courtney, I got just the first question. Brandon's going to be so nice to give it to me. At what point in your life did you know that you were a lot faster than most everybody else?
Oh, wow. All right. Jumping in. I like it.
At running, I should say.
At running. It took a while. Like I always say I was a late bloomer, like end of high school.
And that you could run further than most people. Not just faster, but further.
Yeah. It maybe happened at the same time. Well, it was a progression, but end of high school, I joined a track club. So I was a multi-sport athlete. High school, basketball, volleyball, swim team early, tennis, blah, blah, blah. And so I joined a track club at the end of high school. I think in hindsight, my dad was kind of like, you're not going to get a basketball scholarship. And I know you love to do sports. So it kind of veered me that way. And I wasn't, funny enough, this girl ended up being like one of the top in the country, but I wasn't the fastest in my class. Like There was a girl in my class that was faster than me in the shorter stuff. So I knew I was faster, but I never felt like I was that fast until my last year of high school. And I kind of had like a breakthrough. I had moved to Toronto and I won like the region. And then I got fast enough to get a scholarship to the States, all with kind of like one or two races that last year of high school. And then got to college. I was pretty naive, like didn't really know what to expect, but I like just jumped in with my teammates and our team happened to be really good. So then I ended up, we were second at nationals. We won nationals in the relay. I was in however many time All-American. And then after college, I was like, I feel like I'm just getting started. So let's see what else I can do. So I still at that point felt like I was the underdog because I'm coming out from not a lot of years of running. So to answer your question, I knew I was faster, but I didn't feel like I was I didn't feel like I could be an Olympian until probably 4 years after I was a pro. Then I finally was like, okay, I think this is possible.
Courtney, you mentioned going to Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
Where did you grow up? Where did you go to high school?
I grew up in Chatham, Ontario. It's a small town of like 40,000. Okay. I would say it's very Canadian. We had like 4 indoor hockey rinks, but like not a lot of running. So I went away for my last 2 years of high school and joined a track club. But it also being small was very sports oriented. So I think that helped in my progression. And I come from a sports background. My dad played hockey and baseball. And
what did your folks do in Ontario? What were their jobs?
My dad was a lawyer, and I went to University of Michigan. He had also gone to University of Michigan and then came back, worked in a big firm in Toronto, and then wanted to see us grow up. So he went back to where he grew up. He and my mom met because he was playing junior A hockey in Peterborough, Ontario, which is another smaller town. So she stayed home. We had 4 kids. There was 4 of us. And so, but they were both, my dad was very athletic because that was what was he had the opportunities. But I think if my mom had had more opportunities, like in hindsight, I'm like, board games, you did not want to mess with my mom.
She was competitive.
Very competitive, yes. Okay. My dad was low-key competitive, yeah.
So sports competition was a big deal in your house, it sounds like.
Yeah, I would say we were a pretty sports-focused family.
As you look back at some of those lessons that you got from sports as a child growing up in that house, what were some of the main takeaways that your folks taught you about competition?
As a parent now, I think about this a lot. Like, how did I felt very intrinsically motivated. I never felt like my parents were trying to live vicariously through me or there was pressure to perform. It was always do your best and love what you do. I think of my dad, I always say, was my mental coach through my whole career, even as a pro. And so I think of him a lot of how he presented, and it was always a smile and a hug, whether I was first or last, right? Like there wasn't a lot of emphasis on how we did. It was did you work hard? Did you have fun? And so like, I never felt defined by my place or, if I was good at something, which I appreciate. And it was always, in being my mental coach, I feel like the biggest message that I got and still try and work with is like, I get to control everything that happens, right? Like control what you can control. Whether you think you can or think you can't, you won't. He was a big quotes guy. So I have a lot of like quotes. And like life is not 10%, I was kind of thinking on the way over here. I was like, gosh, my dad had all these great quotes before like Instagram. But life is like 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it. So I feel like that has kind of been a leading guide in my life, both running and kind of outside of it.
So basically, don't be reactive. You're proactive. Just give your best and then control what you can control.
Yeah. You get to decide if you want to try and be better, right? Like you get to decide if you want to show up every day and work harder. So everything is in your control instead of trying to give away your power. Like you have this power to do whatever you want to do. Yeah.
Courtney, when you went off to college, what would you go to school for? What did you major in, or what were the hopes and dreams at that point?
I don't know if I should admit this. Kind of always say I was more of an athlete student than a student athlete. I did go to University of Michigan, so it was hard.
Yeah.
And it wasn't an easy school, but I loved to run, and I didn't decide my major until junior year when my coach called me and said, if you don't decide, you can't compete this weekend. So I was actually a sports broadcasting major.
Okay. You ran track at Michigan.
Yes. And I ran track at Michigan. So I had a lot of great internships. I Sports Illustrated for 2 summers, ABC, NBC Sports. But when I graduated, I had a great offer with CNNSI. They were trying to compete with ESPN. And my dad said, he's like, that's great. And he's like, but you can't go back when you're 40 and be a pro athlete. So if this is what you want to do, you might want to, do it now, which I so appreciate because there were not a lot of female pro athletes at the time. I think the WNBA was the only even pro platform. We grew up with a lot of pro women tennis players in our house.
I don't want to age you. Yeah. What era was this?
Mid-90s.
Mid-90s, okay.
Yeah. So we did have we were a tennis family too, which I think was helpful because that is the one sport that women like Chris Evert and Martina Navratilova, those were my role models. So it didn't feel totally odd to me. It was just nice to have that support, or I don't know if I would have done it.
What did it look like to jump from college to be a pro runner at that time? I mean, was there a league set up, or how did that work in the 90s?
It was all mostly shoe contracts. Okay. So I moved to Boston and ran with Reebok for a year and got to run with Bob Sevigny, who coached Joan Benoit when she won the gold. So I had a really cool experience. And then my visa was up. And then that's how I got introduced to the Mountain West Track Club, which is here in Missoula. So it was the only I shouldn't say the only club, but definitely the only female club at the time, as opposed to being a shoe contract. And they paid for our housing and our travel. And I mean, we were so lucky and are so lucky to be a part of it. So I moved to Missoula kind of thinking where am I going? But sounds great. Let's do it.
What events were your specialty?
I ran the 1500 to the 10K, which is a wide range for most people. Usually you're 15.5 or 5K, 10K. My friend Vicky's always so nice. She's like, you're one of the few that has a wider range. I only ran a handful of 10Ks, but I had the Canadian record in the 5K and the 10K for 15 years. And then I actually dropped back down to the 1500 and started running faster again.
So which one do you like better?
Ooh. I think my favorite distance is the 3K, and they don't run it that much anymore. They only would run it indoors, and they stopped running it outdoors when they added the steeplechase. That nice speed and distance between the 15 and the 5. But I feel like I'm best at the 5K.
Okay.
But I probably like the 15 a little bit more.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So take me inside your mind as a runner of different degrees of distances. What is your thought process in the middle of those races as you're competing at a high level? What are you thinking about when you're running?
Well, the first thing is always relax, 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 right? Like that. If I had one thing to say to myself, every race, I'm go faster, stay relaxed. Catch up, stay relaxed. It's always this, I always feel like it's a bit of meditation. There's always this, it's trying to stay as relaxed as you can and go as fast as you can. Because as soon as you tighten up, then you slow down. And it's easy to get in your head and be like anxious. And so you're really trying to stay level-headed the whole time. If someone pushes you, if you get tripped, whatever happens is how it's supposed to happen, and you just got to regroup. So that's probably the biggest thing. And then it kind of depends on the race. So the 1500, I'm always coming from behind because I don't have the pure speed. So it's like just stay with the pack till halfway, and then that's when you start to catch people or pick people off. The 5K, it's stay in the game the whole time. So you're just staying relaxed, but constantly watching to make sure that if someone makes a move, you can cover it, that you're always in a position to like be near the front. And then in the 10K, it's just to stay focused because it's so easy it's 25 laps. So it's so easy to just wander off and kind of
daydream a
little bit. Thanks. Yeah. I was like,
do you prefer running indoors or outdoors when you are running?
I mean, it's a good question. I'm probably one of the few people that likes running indoors. I have a ton of allergies, so indoors keeps it like a controlled environment.
Looking back at your career, what was the most difficult race you ran, and why was it so difficult? That's a good question. Usually always says, what's the best race? That question's coming.
Yeah. Gosh, what's the most difficult race? I think there's difficult races in different ways, right? I had 2 races I can think of off the top of my head where like I was leading the NCAA championships and I got bumped and I stepped to the inside. And luckily my coach was there because I thought it was disqualified. He said, jump back on. And I ended up 4th, and that was great, but I really felt like I was going to win. And then I qualified for the Olympics, and I made the international standard, but Canada had made a harder standard, and it was in debate for like 6 weeks, and then I didn't make the Olympics. So there was like those like emotionally hard races. I mean, physically hard, there's a lot, but probably the 8K cross country when I lost a shoe and it was full mud, and you're running for your team. So you have to keep running hard. And physically that was the hardest race to finish for sure. So probably those. On
the flip side, favorite race, best race.
Those are maybe 2 different things. Like my favorite racing, there was a couple places like Monaco and Stockholm. Like racing in Europe is just so fun because it's sold out stadiums. So people are like tailgating before the races, and they know track, they know to cheer for the pole vault while the long jump's going on. And just the atmosphere is so great. And they're all kind of usually like 20 to 30,000 stadiums, which is fun. But my best race was World Championships in Paris in 2003. The goal was to make final. I was the last person to make final. So you run a 5K, and then 3 days later you run another one. And I PR'd in the prelim, came in, I think 16 people made the final. And in Canada, if you make top 12, you automatically get a spot to the Olympics the next year. So the first goal was to make top 12. And then the next goal was to obviously like do the best you can. And it played out perfectly. It was kind of this accordion race, and they just kept coming back. And with a lap to go, there's still 12 of us in the mix. And still wasn't perfect. With 200 to go, I got tripped and my hand touched the ground. So I still got tripped up, but I ended up, and there was another Canadian to make it more exciting that broke the Canadian record in the prelim. So it's a 15-year-old record. She broke in the prelim. And then in the final, luckily stayed on my feet, finished the race, and looked up and broke the Canadian record and broke 15 minutes, which if you break 15 minutes of 5K, that's like a big barrier. So to do both of them in the same and then get 8th, and then like I was 3 seconds out of first. So that was like my best race.
And that's when you made the Olympic team?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. And then kind of made that like, now I'm like, oh, I actually can be the best in the world. I'd never made a world final. I'd never, and then my time, it was kind of that like, okay, I finally did what I knew I could do.
What was the Olympic experience like?
It was amazing, right?
Yeah. Where'd you go?
Athens.
Okay.
So, it's sport, so there's ups and downs, but socially it was amazing. But there were only 10 of us in the Canadian team that qualified. So we were a tight-knit group. I'm still in contact with most of the women on that team. And it was just so cool to walk around and see like,
was that 2004?
Yeah.
2004 Olympics?
Yep. So, Yeah, like the tallest basketball player walking by the smallest,
Right.
gymnast. Yes, and like Yao Ming and the gym. You just see them because there's only one big dining hall, so you see everybody, including it was the Andy Roddick year. So like that was like a big thing. So just to get to see all the different shapes and sizes and people who are the best at what they do in one space was pretty amazing. Race-wise, it wasn't great. It was okay. I'd gotten a stress fracture that year. I'd qualified also in the 15 because I'd gotten a top 10 time in the world the year before. And there was a forest fire. There was ash falling in the village. We didn't race until midnight. My 5, like I said, I have allergies. So it wasn't like my best 5K. And then they weren't going to let me run the 15. And then the day before, they let me run the 15. So there was a lot of kind of politics involved, which is a little bit of a bummer. But at the end of the day, it was still great. I mean, my family was there, my friends, and yeah.
It appears that like somebody who gets to the Olympics, like that's the most prestigious moment in all of sport. Mm-hmm. Do you feel that way, or do you feel like there were other accolades that you look back on that hold more value to you than the title of Olympian?
To me personally, I think there's more accolades in terms of like being top 10 in the world. Like that was a big goal. And I mean, places I get to go and the people I got to meet was pretty amazing. I always think that the Olympics just makes it easier to explain what I did, right?
Sure.
Like as a pro athlete, to say, oh, are you a marathoner? I'm like, no, I run in circles, which always sounds funny. But then to say I'm an Olympian, then, oh, okay, I get it.
Legitimizes you in a way.
Yeah, like, and I just think it makes it easier for other people to legitimize you.
Totally. Especially like, if you're not involved in the running community and don't understand when you hear Olympian, like, oh, okay.
Right.
Some credibility.
Yeah. So, and like, not even that I needed that, but it just made it easier.
Sure.
So to explain what I did, because I remember when I didn't qualify in 2000, when they decided not to take me, I know a lot of people who are amazing athletes that have never made an Olympics, and it's easy to say and hard to do, but not have it define your career, especially when my career was like 15 years. But it is a point of pride for sure. And as runners, you know that it's just as hard to make a world championship team as it is to make an Olympic team because the standards are the same, but other people don't know that. So it just was.
Yeah, world champions don't get the prestige or the
not
TV or media attention here.
Mm-hmm.
For a lot of people that aren't in the running community or know what it's like to be an Olympian, what did a training week look like leading up to Athens?
It took me 3 tries to figure this out, but I couldn't. I got hurt 3 times trying to get to 90 miles a week, which is a lot of miles for 5K, 15. So I would run probably anywhere from 75 to 85 miles a week. You run twice a day, Monday through Friday, except for Wednesday. So 4 days a week, you're running twice a day. 4 miles in the morning, and then 2 days a week, you'd have a hard workout in the afternoon. So intervals of anywhere from 6 times a mile to 16 times 800 to it usually was 5 to 6 miles worth of work. And then you'd have another day where you'd have a tempo run, so a 6-mile tempo. And that, which means you're running a minute slower than my 10K pace, right? So you have 3 hard days. And then Wednesday is like 12 miles. And then my Sunday would be like 14 to 16 miles. So, and then a day off every 2 weeks.
Did it feel like work, or was this enjoyable? Like, did you
I loved it.
You loved the running.
I mean, I have to say, like, I liked to push myself. I still do. I don't need to race anymore, but I just like that. Like, let's see what I can do today. I like that, having my mind tell my body what to do and see if it can do it. So I'm sure there were days in hindsight that I didn't feel like doing it, but I don't remember a lot of them.
Let's hit pause here, go to our rapid fire questions. Then I want to come back, Courtney, and hear about the transition from professional runner, professional athlete into what you're doing now.
Into life.
What the future looks like. So,
sounds great.
What is your first initial memory of Missoula, Montana?
Well, my very first one, we actually came here in college. So the Mountain West Classic, high school race used to also be a college race. And I remember flying in and thinking, where am I? And seeing the hills. And I worked in Banff for summers. So I was like, well, these aren't really mountains. And then when I moved here, a similar thought of like, why do the hills have no trees on them? Which is a random first thought. But those are kind of my first like visual thoughts of Missoula.
What's your go-to coffee place in Missoula?
Oh my gosh, so many. I don't think I can narrow it down. I am a coffee person. So like Drum, Clyde, black coffee, and Le Petit are all my go-tos.
Same.
Nice.
They're all solid. What's your favorite restaurant?
Oh, I feel like I have a lot that I like the atmosphere, I like the food. I don't know if I have a favorite, but our favorite takeout for sure is Wally and Buck.
What zip code do you live in?
59803 up off Patty Canyon.
The best zip code in Missoula. Let me remind you, Stephen. What to you is the weirdest thing about Missoula?
This is a tough one. I think. Oh my gosh, I'm totally speaking. I don't have like any thoughts on it right now. I just remember the T-shirts like "Keep Missoula Weird."
Missoula Weird and the bumper stickers.
Yes, like from Rock and Rudy's.
Yep.
And it always felt a little weirder. And like when I thought of weird then, and I don't see it as much now, it's just the characters that I also think make it great, right? Like the octopus and the dancers that were at, Karis Park all the time. Like just the characters of Missoula, which I think make it weird and great.
What do you love most about Missoula?
I love the people, the community. I think people in Missoula show up for each other and support each other and kind of cheer each other on, which I think I've always felt that way. As soon as I moved here, I just felt there's like a connection in this community that a lot of places don't have. And I'm super grateful to live here and be a part of it.
Courtney, is there a particular book that you've read at some point in your life that's made a significant impact on who you are?
It's probably a while ago. I don't know if you have kids, but there's a large chunk of time you can't read a book. So I read some fluff books lately, but when growing up, my dad again would give me books like Coach K and John Wooden, and just really provoke like positive attitude, like finding the good, I love like just to see how other people have navigated the sports world.
I was going to ask earlier if your dad was a Wooden fan, because he's like the most quotable. Him and Vince Lombardi.
Vince Lombardi,
like
totally.
Back and forth on those. That's all you need.
Yeah, I know. You just have those two, you're good.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about post-Athens. Did your running career continue, or was it time to go a different direction?
It continued until, so came back the next year, took a little bit of a break, and then it continued in 2006. I got pregnant and then had my first baby, who's now 17, and then came back for 2 years. And then when I got pregnant with my second, I retired. So there was another like 3 years in there of trying to come back after C-section, which had its own challenges. And then running a few indoor races more than outdoor. And then I retired.
Mm-hmm. Take us through the psychological process of retiring after such a long career. Did you feel like the laziest person in the world because you weren't having 2-a-day training sessions and 85-mile weeks? What was that like?
Or did you continue 2-a-day training
well,
sessions?
I know. I should have. I was like, I would love to say I didn't do anything. It was actually the busiest time in my life.
Sure.
So it was a good transition. So I had a baby. Then I actually, just kind of out of nowhere, the coach left. So I actually was the head coach at the University of Montana for 5 years. So I was the head cross-country assistant track coach. I mean, in hindsight, it's hard to believe that I did this, but I was still running as a pro for 1 year while I was the head coach, and I had a 1-year-old. And then I retired the next year. I had a 2-year-old, I guess. And then I retired the next year. So then I was pregnant with, but I was always still running. And then I actually have run some masters races since then, because I love to run. Like, I just love how it makes me feel more than like needing to, like, I mean, I guess you need to, but it's who I am. It's like a big piece of it. So I continued running and racing a little bit.
What was that like, being the head cross country coach, being at such a high level runner? Did you often have kids on your team that maybe didn't have the same drive as you? And how did you deal with that? Because I've heard this is a weird thing for like high achievers, is it's not always easy to be a coach then. Yeah,
that's a really good question. I think I was really lucky to the team I came into. I had really great people, firstly, and athletes. And I think now in hindsight, some comments, I probably pushed them a little more than they were used to. But we also did really well. And they took it in stride, like, no pun intended, I was going to say they took it in stride, but they were really receptive to it. And I loved my teams, both the men and the women. And there's definitely always going to be some people that kind of don't meet your level of expectation. But I think it was good timing in that I could step back a little bit. And I know I'm not really a type A for being a runner. A lot of runners are type A. I'm a little more, I don't know if balance is the right word, but I can kind of see both sides a little bit. I mean, maybe my athletes would have a different take on it, but I think I could appreciate the work that they put in because everybody did work pretty hard at that time.
Just not as hard as their coach.
It's not as hard. I mean, I'm not going to lie. That first year we got a little competitive. One of the guys didn't run as fast as me. It wasn't like, it was, are always back and forth. But yes, but I can appreciate that everybody is like working their hardest.
Yep.
Yeah.
So raising babies, coaching, at the end of that 5 years, where do you go from there? Where does your life take you?
Then I started Key Running. So I didn't change my last name, but my family's last name is Key. So my kids and my husband, and sounded a lot better than Babcock Running. So I went with Key Running and started coaching just kind of like the everyday runner. And this is maybe where my personality is different. I didn't really want to coach elites and people that were really good. I felt like that takes like a different mentality and also in time. And I love helping people. And so I love to help the people that maybe have a harder time helping themselves. Like, I don't want to sound that like they can't, but just like that want to get better, maybe don't know how, or want a community. Like I love creating kind of community with running. And we have such a great running community in Missoula. So it was a pretty easy transition in terms of being able to do that. I mean, honestly, I wasn't looking to coach, right? Like I was going to do interior design, and then it kind of fell on my lap. And then I'm so grateful that it did, because it's kind of gotten me to where I am now. And yeah, I get to work with all kinds of people.
What were some of those challenges in building the business and working with runners that wanted to be motivated, but maybe needed some help? Going from professional athlete, I guess, to now business owner, what were some challenges in that?
I mean, I think any business owner will tell you it's always going to be tough, right? Trying to get your name out there and find clients, and, whether that's this business or the other, the sports specialist that I started this year. I think it takes years, a year. Everyone says it takes a year, and then it can take years, and then it's up and down. So I think the up and down of entrepreneurship is hard. And just trusting that it's going to work out, which I always feel like that was my mother's mantra, like it'll all work out. But it wasn't a challenge in terms of working with the people, because I had just had 2 kids. So I had come from zero. Like I literally couldn't run to the end of the block after a C-section. Like it's crazy to think about that, but I could maybe run 30 seconds. And so I feel like it was very helpful in me being a coach to understand what zero feels like and to really start from scratch. And I would run, walk, and then I would, moved up to 3 minutes of running, and then I moved up to 5 minutes. It's a progression. And so I could take people through that because I had just been through it.
Are you still running today? I mean, you're coaching, but are you still, I would say competitive, but you and I have different definitions of what competitive running is. Are you still getting out and running?
Yes.
If that makes sense?
Yeah. I run about 5 days a week.
Okay.
I take my rest very seriously. So I don't run every day. I run most days. And I don't think I'm as competitive as I was maybe even 4 or 5 years ago. Okay. I always say I race to travel. So I've done I did a master's race in Budapest. I did one in Spain. I was going to look to see if I could break 5 minutes at 50, which was 2 years ago. And then I went through menopause, and I'm like, things are feeling a little harder. And then now I'm back to feeling good again. And so I'm just, you just kind of have to find your balance, and I'm not opposed to it. I might race again, but right now I'm just happy to run.
Yeah. How many miles a day are you running when you go out?
I probably run like 30 miles a week. So 30 to 35. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about how key running didn't turn into maybe sports specialist is an addition to key running. Tell us a little bit about how that came about.
The sports specialist, is a separate online platform from Key Running, although I am on it as a coach technically, and the founder, but it's this platform I'm super excited about. There's nothing else really out there like it. And it's a space where anyone, anywhere in the world can get on and just have a one-on-one Zoom call with different experts in sport. So pro athletes, we have gold medalists, I think we have like 15 Olympians. Sports injuries, we have some great people in town like Rich Willie, Casey Cordial. There's a few other people on there. Mental performance, nutrition, strength, and college consulting. So I feel like there aren't a lot of spaces where you're going to get expert, like trusted advice. And everybody on the site is someone that I knew as the best. Like if everybody has that person when you think of like, who do you know knows their stuff and who do you know is the best? I had those people. And then I would ask those people who they thought their go-to person was, and then so on and so on. So it's created from a very trusted and vetted space and just an opportunity for people to get expert level information, whether that's an adult athlete. Like I would say most adults probably aren't trying to get better at like soccer and lacrosse, but it's across all sports. So it's adult athletes, but also parents and like teen athletes. And there's like teens, like nutrition is such a huge piece and sleep. I'm a huge believer in getting enough sleep. But like, who do you turn to for that? And what if you have a one-off question or you just need some inspiration? Or like Allie Long, who lives in Missoula, is a pro soccer national team player. And if your daughter is like having a hard time with a coach, and how do you navigate that? And all these like little questions that people might have and they don't know who to turn to ask them. We kind of created that space.
You created a networking group for athletes, it sounds like.
Yes.
Basically to get the information they need.
Yes. Yeah.
That's amazing.
So you know where to turn.
You're a connector.
I'm a connector. It's
I
true.
love that.
I do love
Looking at
people.
like nutrition and what you know now about running athletes compared to what you knew back in the mid 90s and early 2000s, would you have done things differently if you knew then what you know today?
Good question.
Or would it have made a difference?
I don't know that it would have made a huge difference. I think then we knew that you needed protein and carbs right after a hard interval, right? Like hard sessions, you need to get food in within a half hour. I feel like that science that's still one of the most important pieces is still there. And I was super lucky to have a dad that knew. He's like, when you move to Missoula, just spend money on a mattress. He's like, sleep is going to be your most important piece as an athlete. And I'm someone that likes and gets a lot of sleep, like 9 to 10 hours still. And I always say it's the most underused performance enhancer. I don't know if you've all seen the science on it, but just like the Stanford basketball players improved 9% by getting an 8 to 10 instead of 6 to 8. And I said, if I told someone they could run an 18-minute 5K instead of a 20-minute 5K just by getting more sleep, like, of course you would do that. You don't have to go do 400-meter intervals. You can just do this. So I feel like I was lucky to be ahead on the sleep and nutrition, because those kind of, for me, go a little bit hand in hand. I think I probably could have done it slightly differently, but no, I don't know that I have a ton of nutrition regrets.
Why do you think Missoula is this hot spot for runners and professional, athletes?
Yeah.
What is it about this place?
Oh, gosh. I know Missoula is just this amazing space for people, I think, to just come and be themselves. What I love about Missoula is that it's not, and I don't know if this is a knock on Boulder, but it's not aggro. Like, it's people come here and are really good at what they do, but don't either need, it's not even that they need to tell anybody. It's just don't need to like show it off, I guess, for lack of a better way to explain it. They can just go do their own thing or do it with other people, which is probably why you're here too, or why people are here. And you're just part of a community that lifts that up and wants you to be better, and it doesn't feel super competitive. So I think that that's part of it. But yeah, it's a good question. We have all these amazing athletes. Like, it's really outstanding how many people are in Missoula.
That's crazy. I was on a run last Wednesday, and I'm on the Kim Williams Trail and just go by Adam Peterman.
Yeah.
It's no big deal.
Totally.
And I look over to my friend. I'm like, yeah, he's one of the best in the world at the 100-mile.
Yeah.
They're like, no. I'm like, yeah, he is. So it's just crazy. That happens often in this city, which is cool.
I know.
Okay, here's my other vulnerable question. So I hope my wife's not listening to this. Been trying to get my wife into running for the last 5 years. I'm not very good at getting her interested in running. So you obviously worked with people that needed a little motivation. What advice would you give me or my wife to help her get started on her journey?
I would say, it's like anything to just start, right? 30 seconds is great. But I get that people don't like to run. Like when I came back from kids, I'm like, this sucks. Like, no wonder people hate running. It is so hard. But it takes about 4 to 6 weeks of being consistent, which consistent to me is about 3 times a week. Like if you can be, 4 is a bonus. 2, I feel like isn't quite enough. Like 3 to 4 is that sweet spot. And that could be 20 minutes to start. And that might be run walk to start. But to be consistent, then you get over that hump of having to think of every step. And then you can you're not in full cruise control yet, but you can maybe listen to a podcast and actually get out of your head a little bit. Because it's 4 to 6 weeks, I always think of kind of, you're in your head the whole time. Like, can I get to that tree? Okay, one more step. And then when you get to cruise control, which is maybe 2 months, then that's when you get to work through your problems. That's the magic of running, right? You go and you run and everything feels better and you release whatever stress it is. And it's like one of the only times, I sometimes wear AirPods and I love to run with friends. It's very social. That's what I love about the sport. But it's also, if you're by yourself, it's one of the few times, unless you're like driving or like in the shower, that you're just with yourself. And so you get this time to like process and work through problems and get to check in.
Courtney, you mentioned your 2 sons. Is your running and athletic ability, is it genetic? Are they runners? Are they in track?
My oldest is a runner. He's a senior, and then my freshman played soccer this year. Okay. I was really hoping, I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of hoping he would run cross country just so they could do it together, more so than like wanting him to be good. But my oldest one loves it, and it's super fun to see him love something. I didn't push running by any means. I was kind of, had them do all the sports. And so it's fun to see him find it. And then he wants to run in college and pursue that. But I'm not going to lie, like until I had kids and my friends had kids, I didn't realize how genetic athletics was. And then I see like my friends' kids, like I have a group of college friends. We met last week and their kids, half of them are playing D1 sports. So it's kind of interesting. Yeah. But yes, they're both athletic and
Where does he want to go for school?
He was hoping MSU. They have a really great team. There's all these new NCAA rules with roster limits. I don't know if you're familiar. So this new NCAA rule is kind of making him kind of maybe think about different spaces. I, of course, am like, maybe look in Canada. Yeah.
Better than MSU. No offense to your son. Missoula podcaster.
Oh, right. Totally. Yes, just somewhere that he can run. Yeah. Hopefully. And they're Canadian, so the tuition in Canada is like nothing.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, I got my final question for you. If you can just encapsulate what running and competing and coaching and all of that, what you've learned from that, or what it's meant to you. How would you do that in a few sentences? Or I'll even give you a paragraph.
Great question. How do I do that in a few sentences?
It's been a huge part of your life.
Yes.
But yeah, what has that done for your life? And maybe just give us a summary of why you love it.
Wow. So many amazing pieces. I got to do what I love to do for, 15 years as a pro, but then 5 years in college. It's like 20 years I got to travel. I think I've been to almost every state and all over the world, and I love to travel. So I got to do like my 2 loves, get paid to do what I loved. So there's that, just as like, and then now I get to continue that and help other people with it. So that's huge for me, like just to find something that it's not hard for me to do every day. Like I know how hard motivation is for people. And I am acutely aware that I am so lucky that I look forward to it and look forward to working out and look forward to, I love strength, right? Like going to the gym. And I know that that's not the case for a lot of people. So it's given me the best friendships. Like I said, I'm still in contact with people from 20 years ago and from college. And I mean, I also love that running is just a metaphor for life. So all these, I don't think I would have had the same relationship with my dad if I hadn't run, because it provided an opportunity for kind of these life lessons. And whether it's through quotes or through him telling me or him showing me, and my mom too, was just, she was very gracious about being like, this is you and your dad's thing. But to get to how the relationships I have through running is probably the best part.
Courtney, my last question, with the new year, 2025, what's on the radar for this year? What's next for you and your business and your running and parenting and coaching?
Oh
and
my gosh. So
all the
many,
things.
all the things. Gosh. I mean, I think I'm most excited. I have this amazing group with Key Running, and I love that. And I want to continue that, obviously. And I feel really lucky that they are all connected and they'll go run with each other. And I always want to progress my coaching, but I'm most excited about the sports specialist and that platform and just making it available to more people and trying to, again, like solve problems for people of like what questions you have and how can you get motivated? And maybe that's why they call, or how can you get better? And all of these pieces that you don't know where to turn. And so hopefully this provides a space for people to know where they can get that information. So I'm definitely most excited about that and just trying to build that brand a little bit more.
Awesome. Courtney Babcock, thanks for joining the episode.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. This is really fun. Appreciate it.
What's up, Missoula? This is Nick Balla, producer of the Missoula podcast. We truly appreciate you hanging out with us as we dive into the stories that make our city special. If you could do us a quick favor and follow the show wherever you are listening, whether that's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, maybe you're watching on YouTube, so hit that little subscribe button. It really helps us out. Head on over to www.themissoulapodcast.com for more information, and we'll see you next week.